The corner of 5th and Broadway in downtown Seattle was Jordan Chen's spot. Not officially, nothing on the street was official when you were homeless, but it was where he'd been sleeping for the past 3 months, tucked into the doorway of an abandoned storefront that provided some shelter from the rain. At 16 years old, Jordan had been on his own for half a year, ever since his foster family decided they couldn't handle him anymore and told the state to come get him. Jordan had run instead. Figured he'd take his chances on the street rather than go back into the system that had chewed him up since he was 8. It was late October, and Seattle was living up to its reputation. Rain had been falling steadily for 2 days, and Jordan was soaked through despite the doorway's meager protection. He had a sleeping bag that was more holes than fabric, a backpack with everything he owned, and exactly $4.37 in his pocket. He'd spent the day trying to find work, anything, anywhere. But nobody wanted to hire a kid with no address, no phone number, and no references. Around 6 in the evening, Jordan walked to the convenience store 3 blocks away and bought 2 items, a bottle of water for $1 and a pre-made sandwich for $3. That left him with 37 cents and no prospects for dinner tomorrow, but he'd learned not to think too far ahead. Today's hunger was enough to worry about without adding tomorrow's. He walked back to his doorway and sat down on his sleeping bag, unwrapping the sandwich slowly to make it last. Turkey and cheese on wheat bread, nothing special, but it was food, and he was grateful for it. He'd eaten half of it when he heard the motorcycle. The sound was distinctive, a deep rumble that echoed off the buildings, and Jordan looked up to see a bike pull to the curb about 20 feet away. The rider was a big man, maybe 50, wearing a leather vest despite the rain. The vest had patches on it, the kind that identified motorcycle club members. The man killed the engine and sat there for a moment, rain streaming off his helmet. Then the bike made a sound it shouldn't have made, a grinding metallic groan, and died completely. The man tried to restart it. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. He climbed off and stood looking at the bike, rain soaking into his clothes, and even from 20 feet away, Jordan could see the frustration in his posture. The man pulled out his phone, checked it, cursed quietly. Probably dead battery or no service in the rain. He looked around, taking in the empty street, the closed businesses, the lack of any help. Then his eyes landed on Jordan, and Jordan instinctively tensed. He'd learned to be wary of adult men, especially ones who looked tough and could easily hurt a scrawny homeless kid. But the man just nodded and turned his attention back to his bike, opening the saddlebag and pulling out tools. He knelt down in the rain, water pooling around his knees, and started trying to diagnose the problem. Jordan watched for a few minutes, finishing his half of the sandwich. The man clearly knew motorcycles. His movements were confident and practiced, but whatever was wrong wasn't something that could be fixed easily on the street in the rain. After about 20 minutes, the man sat back on his heels and wiped rain from his face, looking defeated. Jordan thought about the other half of his sandwich, thought about the fact that he had no money for tomorrow's food, thought about survival and self-preservation and all the reasons he should just stay in his doorway and mind his own business. Then he thought about the fact that this man was stuck in the rain, clearly frustrated and probably hungry, trying to fix a problem he couldn't fix. Jordan knew what it felt like to be stuck with no help and no options. He knew what it felt like to be alone. He stood up and walked over to the man, holding out the other half of his sandwich. "You look like you could use this." The man looked up, surprised. His face was weathered and bearded, his eyes tired but kind. "Kid, I can't take your food. I already ate half. This is extra. You're living in that doorway. You need it more than I do." Jordan shrugged. "Maybe, but you're stuck in the rain trying to fix a bike that won't start, and I'm betting you haven't eaten in a while. Take it. I'll figure something out tomorrow." The man studied Jordan for a long moment, and Jordan could see him processing the situation. Homeless teenager offering his last bit of food in the rain to a stranger. Finally, the man reached out and took the sandwich. "Thank you. That's real kind of you." "No problem." Jordan turned to go back to his doorway. "Wait, what's your name?" "Jordan. I'm Vincent." "Friends call me Vince." He took a bite of the sandwich, and Jordan saw genuine relief in his face. "This is really good. When's the last time you ate?" Yesterday morning, but I'm okay. I'm used to it. Vince's expression darkened. Nobody should be used to that. You out here alone? Yeah, been on the street about 6 months. Family? Don't have any. Foster care until I ran. Vince nodded slowly like he was putting pieces together. How old are you? 16. Jesus. Vince finished the sandwich and stood up, looking at his dead motorcycle, then at Jordan. My bike's not going anywhere tonight. I need to call for a tow, but my phone's dead. You know anywhere around here I can charge it? Library's closed. Most businesses are closed. There's a McDonald's about 6 blocks that way, but they'll kick you out if you're not buying anything. I'll buy something. You want to come? Get some food? Jordan hesitated. Vince seemed okay, but Jordan had learned the hard way that seeming okay wasn't the same as being okay. I don't need charity. It's not charity. You gave me your sandwich. Least I can do is buy you dinner. Come on, it's warm and dry, and we can both use the break from this rain. Jordan weighed his options. He was soaked and cold and still hungry, despite the half sandwich. The worst thing that happened was he got a free meal and then left. The best thing was, well, he didn't know, but it was worth finding out. Okay. They walked 6 blocks through the rain, Vince pushing his dead motorcycle along the sidewalk. At the McDonald's, Vince ordered 2 full meals, burgers, fries, drinks, and told Jordan to get whatever else he wanted. Jordan added a couple of extra burgers for later, and Vince didn't comment, just paid. They sat in a booth in the back, and Jordan ate while Vince charged his phone. Between bites, Vince made some calls to a tow company, to someone named Pete, who was apparently club president, to someone else about a place to stay tonight. When he was done, Vince set his phone down and looked at Jordan. Okay, my bike's getting towed to a shop. I'm staying at a motel tonight, but I want to talk to you about something first. Jordan tensed. About what? About the fact that you're 16 years old and living in a doorway. About the fact that you gave your last food to a stranger. About the fact that winter's coming and you're not going to survive on the street. I've survived this long. That doesn't mean you should have to keep surviving. There are programs, shelters, services for kids in your situation. I've been in those programs. They don't work. Foster care doesn't work. I'm better off on my own. Vince was quiet for a moment. What if there was another option? Something different? Like what? My motorcycle club. We're not just riders. We're a community. We've got resources, connections. We've helped other kids get off the street, get into better situations. Would you be open to letting us try to help you? Jordan wanted to say no, wanted to maintain his independence, his self-reliance, but he was also 16 and exhausted and scared of what winter would bring. And there was something in Vince's eyes that seemed genuine. What kind of help? Let me make some calls, talk to some people, see what we can put together, but at minimum, we can get you somewhere warm and safe tonight. Then we figure out tomorrow. Jordan thought about his doorway, about the cold and the rain, and the certainty that tomorrow would be just as hard as today. Okay, but I'm not going back into foster care. Understood. We'll find something better. Vince made more calls while Jordan finished eating. The conversations were low-voiced, but Jordan caught pieces. Homeless kid. Gave me his last food. We need to help him. What can we do? Finally, Vince hung up and smiled. Okay, here's the plan. My club president, Pete, and his wife, Lisa, run a transitional housing program for teenagers. It's not foster care. It's more like a halfway house with support services. They've got a bed opening up next week. Until then, you're staying at a motel room we're going to pay for. You'll have a place to sleep, shower, get clean clothes, and we're going to start working on getting you back into school and finding you a job. Jordan stared at him. Why would you do all this for me? You don't even know me. Because you gave me your last sandwich. Because you saw someone struggling and helped, even though you could barely help yourself. That's character, Jordan. That's the kind of person worth investing in. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not worth it? Then we deal with that if it happens. But I don't think it will. I've been doing this a long time, reading people, figuring out who they really are. And you're a good kid who's had some bad breaks. You deserve a chance. Jordan felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd been keeping locked down for 6 months. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. Okay, he whispered. Okay. That night, Jordan slept in a motel bed for the first time in months. Vince got him his own room, gave him money for food, and told him to rest. Jordan took a hot shower that lasted 20 minutes, standing under the water until it ran cold, washing away months of dirt and street grime. He looked at himself in the mirror afterward and barely recognized the skinny, hollow-eyed kid staring back, but he was clean and warm and safe. Over the next week, Vince checked in daily. He brought Jordan clothes from a thrift store, helped him get a library card so he had somewhere to spend his days, took him to meals, and just talked to him like he was a person who mattered. Vince told Jordan about his own life, about growing up rough, making bad choices, eventually finding the motorcycle club, and discovering that brotherhood could save you if you let it. "I was lost until I found my club," Vince said over dinner one evening. "They gave me structure, purpose, a code to live by. That's what I want to give you, a foundation to build on." "What's the code?" Jordan asked. "Loyalty. Honor. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Take care of your brothers. Stand up when others sit down. Be the kind of man you'd want your son to become." Vince paused. "And sometimes it means seeing someone in need and helping them, even when it's inconvenient or costs you something, like you did for me." "I just gave you a sandwich." "You gave me your last sandwich. That's everything when you have nothing." The following week, Jordan moved into the transitional housing program. It was a large house in a residential neighborhood, home to 6 other teenagers who were all in similar situations, aging out of foster care, recovering from homelessness, trying to get their lives together. Pete and Lisa, the couple who ran it, were in their 40s and had dedicated their lives to helping kids like Jordan. "Welcome home," Lisa said when Jordan arrived with his meager belongings. "You're safe here, and we're going to help you build a future." The first few weeks were an adjustment. Jordan had to follow rules, curfew, chores, mandatory counseling sessions. But the structure was oddly comforting after months of chaos. He had 3 meals a day, a bed that was his, counselors who actually seemed to care about his progress. And the motorcycle club was involved in ways Jordan hadn't expected. Members volunteered as mentors, teaching life skills, offering job training, just being present as positive adult figures. Vince became Jordan's official mentor, checking in multiple times a week, taking him to club events, introducing him to people who could help. One of those people was Marcus, a club member who owned a landscaping business. "You ever done yard work?" Marcus asked Jordan during a club barbecue. "Some. In one of my foster homes. I need help. Part-time after school, full-time in summer. Pays decent, and I'll work around your schedule. You interested?" Jordan didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely, yes." "Good. You start Monday." Jordan also re-enrolled in school, starting as a junior at the local high school. It was terrifying at first. He was behind in credits, hadn't been in a classroom in over a year, felt like everyone could tell he was different. But the school had a program for students in unusual situations, and they worked with him to catch up. More importantly, Jordan had people supporting him. Vince helped with homework. Lisa made sure he had supplies and clean clothes. Pete drove him to school when the bus schedule didn't work. The other kids in the transitional house became like siblings, all of them understanding what it meant to fight for a better future. By Christmas, Jordan had been in the program for 2 months. He was working steadily for Marcus, making decent grades, starting to believe that maybe he could actually graduate high school and have a real life. Vince invited him to the club's Christmas party, and Jordan went nervously, not sure he belonged. But the club members welcomed him like he was family, gave him gifts, practical things like a good winter coat and work boots, but also things that showed they knew him, like a book he'd mentioned wanting to read and a journal for writing. "You've been doing really well," Vince told him during the party. "Pete says you're one of the most motivated kids in the program. Marcus says you're his best worker. I'm proud of you, Jordan." Jordan felt his eyes sting. "I don't know how to thank you." "For everything. For seeing something in me worth saving." "You saved yourself. I just gave you an opportunity. You're the one doing the hard work. But if you hadn't stopped that night, if your bike hadn't broken down right by my doorway, then someone else would have helped you eventually. Good people don't stay invisible forever. Someone sees them. Someone steps up. I'm just glad it was me." Time passed. Jordan continued to thrive. He graduated high school on time, with honors, giving a speech at graduation about second chances and the power of community. Vince and the entire motorcycle club showed up, their leather vests standing out among the suits and dresses, but nobody cared. They were there for Jordan, and that was what mattered. After graduation, Jordan faced a choice: college, or trade school, or work. He'd been accepted to community college with financial aid, but he was also considering Marcus's offer to learn the landscaping business full-time, with the possibility of eventually becoming a partner. Vince sat with him while he made the decision. "What do you want?" "I don't know. College seems like the smart choice, but I love the landscaping work. I'm good at it. And Marcus is offering me a real future." "Then do both. Take business classes at community college while working for Marcus. Learn the theory and the practice. In a few years, you'll be equipped to run your own company if you want." Jordan did exactly that. He worked for Marcus during the day and took classes at night. It was exhausting, but he was used to hard work. And more importantly, he had support. The transitional house let him stay past the normal age limit since he was in school. The club helped with tuition. Marcus adjusted his schedule to accommodate classes. 2 years later, at 18, Jordan moved into his own apartment. It was tiny and cheap, but it was his. He'd never had his own space before, and the independence was intoxicating. Vince helped him move in, along with several other club members who brought furniture and supplies. "You've come a long way from that doorway," Vince said, standing in Jordan's small living room. "I think about that night a lot, about how close I was to just staying stuck there. If I hadn't given you that sandwich, if you hadn't helped me, then something else would have happened." "You were always going to find your way, Jordan. You're too determined to stay down. I just helped you get there faster. I want to pay it forward. Help other kids like me. You will. When you're ready, you will." At 21, Jordan graduated from community college with a degree in business management. Marcus made him a full partner in the landscaping company, and they expanded, hiring more employees and taking on bigger contracts. Jordan was good at the business side, negotiating deals, managing finances, building relationships with clients. He was building something real, something that would last. He also started volunteering with Pete and Lisa at the Transitional Housing Program, mentoring younger kids who were in the same situation he'd been in. He told them his story, the doorway, the sandwich, the biker who'd helped him, the years of hard work to build a life. He showed them that it was possible to go from homeless to homeowner, from hungry to successful, from invisible to valued. One kid he mentored, a 15-year-old named Derek, who reminded Jordan of his younger self, asked him, "What's the most important thing you learned?" Jordan thought about it. That asking for help isn't weakness, that accepting help isn't failure, and that small acts of kindness can change everything. I gave a stranger half a sandwich, and he gave me a future. That's not equal, but that's how kindness works. It multiplies. You give what you can, and it comes back to you bigger than you could have imagined. On the 5-year anniversary of the night Vince's motorcycle broke down, the motorcycle club threw a party to celebrate Jordan's success. They'd watched him transform from a scared homeless kid to a confident young businessman, and they wanted to honor that journey. But Jordan had a surprise of his own. He'd been working on something for months, and he was ready to reveal it. "I want to announce something," Jordan said during the party. "I've been saving money and making plans, and I've established a nonprofit organization. It's called Second Chance Foundation, and its mission is to help homeless teenagers get off the street and into stable housing, education, and employment. We're partnering with Pete and Lisa's program, with local schools, with businesses willing to hire and train young people. And we're using the motorcycle club model: mentorship, brotherhood, community support." The room was silent. Then Vince started clapping, and others joined in until the whole room was applauding. Vince approached Jordan, his eyes wet. "You're doing it. You're paying it forward. I learned from the best. You showed me how. Now I'm showing others. Your parents, wherever they are, would be proud." Jordan felt his throat tighten. He'd never known his parents. His mother had given him up at birth. His father was never in the picture. "I used to think that not having parents made me less somehow, like I was missing something fundamental. But I realize now that I had family all along. It just didn't look traditional. You, Pete, Lisa, the club, you were my family. You raised me. And I'm proud of who I became because of you." The Second Chance Foundation grew rapidly. Jordan's story resonated with people and donations poured in. Within a year, they'd helped 30 teenagers get off the streets. Within 3 years, that number was over 100, and Jordan was there for all of it, running the organization while still working with Marcus, mentoring kids, telling his story to anyone who would listen. The local news picked up the story, and Jordan found himself being interviewed, explaining how a single act of kindness, giving his last sandwich to a stranger, had set off a chain reaction that was now saving lives. "Do you still see Vince?" the reporter asked. "All the time. He's like a father to me. He'll always be family. What would you say to him if he was here right now?" "I'd say thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for showing me that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, who stays, who refuses to give up on you even when you've given up on yourself." The interview aired, and Jordan's phone exploded with messages from people inspired by his story, from donors wanting to help, from teenagers asking how they could get into the program, from adults wanting to volunteer. But the message that meant the most was from Vince. "Proud doesn't begin to cover it. You've become exactly who I knew you could be, and you're making the world better in the process. That's everything." 10 years after that rainy October night, Jordan stood in front of a crowd at a fundraiser for the Second Chance Foundation. The event was held at a fancy hotel downtown, attended by business leaders and politicians and community activists. Jordan had come a long way from the homeless kid in a doorway, but he hadn't forgotten where he came from. He never would. "I want to tell you a story," Jordan said into the microphone. 10 years ago, I was homeless, 16 years old, living in a doorway on 5th and Broadway. I had $4 to my name and I used it to buy a sandwich. That was going to be my food for the next 2 days. The room was silent, everyone listening. Then a biker's motorcycle broke down right in front of me. He was stuck in the rain, trying to fix it, clearly frustrated and hungry. And I made a choice. I gave him half my sandwich. It wasn't much, just half a cheap turkey sandwich from a convenience store, but it was all I had." Jordan paused, looking out at the crowd. Vince was in the front row, smiling. That biker's name was Vincent, and instead of just taking my sandwich and leaving, he saw me. Really saw me. Saw that I was homeless and hungry and alone, and he decided to help. He bought me dinner. He called his motorcycle club, and together they changed my life. Jordan detailed what came next: the transitional housing, the job, the education, the support system that helped him build a life. He talked about the years of hard work, the setbacks and the victories, the slow transformation from victim to survivor to thriver. "But here's the thing," Jordan said. "Vince didn't save me. I saved myself with the tools and support he provided, and that's what we do at Second Chance Foundation. We don't save kids. We give them the tools to save themselves. We provide housing, education, job training, mentorship. We create a community that says, you matter, you're worth investing in. We believe in your potential." He looked at Vince. "Vince, would you come up here?" Vince stood and walked to the stage, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Jordan pulled him into a hug, then turned to the crowd. "This man changed my life. But he'll tell you he just did what anyone would do. And that's the point. What Vince did, seeing someone in need and helping them, that's not extraordinary. It should be ordinary. It should be what we all do. And through Second Chance Foundation, we're trying to make it easier for people to help. We're creating systems and structures that turn individual acts of kindness into lasting change." The crowd stood and applauded. Vince had tears streaming down his face, and Jordan did too. After the fundraiser, Jordan and Vince stood outside the hotel, watching the city lights. "You know what the craziest part of all this is?" Jordan said. "What's that? If your motorcycle hadn't broken down that specific night, in that specific place, none of this happens. Second Chance Foundation doesn't exist. The 100 kids we've helped are still on the street. My whole life is different." Or maybe someone else would have helped you. Maybe this was always your destiny, and I was just the vehicle for getting you there. Maybe, but I'm glad it was you. Vince smiled. "Me too, kid, me too." They stood in comfortable silence, two men who'd found family in each other, bound by a sandwich and a choice and a decade of love and support. "I have something for you," Jordan said. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Vince. Vince opened it and found a key inside. What's this? Key to a Harley, brand new. I ordered it custom with your club's colors and patches. It's being delivered next week. Jordan, you can't afford. I can afford it. The business is doing well and I've been saving. You gave me your time, your mentorship, your family. The least I can do is replace the motorcycle that broke down and started all this. Vince looked at the key, then at Jordan, and pulled him into a fierce hug. You didn't have to do this. Yeah, I did. Because you taught me that when someone helps you, you find a way to say thank you. And when you can't thank them enough, you pay it forward to someone else. I've been doing both. This is the thank you. Second Chance Foundation is the paying forward. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep writing. Keep showing up for kids who need help. Keep being you. I can do that. On the day the motorcycle was delivered, the entire club showed up to see it. It was beautiful. Gleaming chrome and black paint, the club's Phoenix logo on the tank, Vince's road name Phoenix on the side. Vince stood looking at it with wonder, running his hands over the metal like he couldn't quite believe it was real. This is too much, he kept saying, but Jordan could see the joy in his face. It's not enough, Jordan replied. It'll never be enough to repay what you did for me. But it's a start. Vince took the bike for its first ride with Jordan riding behind him on a borrowed bike, the rest of the club forming a convoy. They rode through Seattle, past the corner of 5th and Broadway where Jordan's doorway had been, now occupied by a new business. Past the McDonald's where Vince had bought him dinner. Past the transitional housing program where Jordan had rebuilt his life. Past the office where Second Chance Foundation was headquartered. A route that traced Jordan's journey from homeless to homeowner, from hungry to thriving, from alone to surrounded by family. When they got back to the clubhouse, there was a celebration, food and music and stories shared among brothers. Jordan stood back and watched, marveling at how far he'd come, how much had changed. Derek, the kid Jordan had been mentoring, approached him. You really gave that guy your last sandwich? I did. And he really helped you because of that. He did. That's crazy. Like, that shouldn't work. One sandwich shouldn't change someone's whole life. Jordan smiled. It wasn't the sandwich. It was what the sandwich represented, someone with nothing giving what they had to help someone else. That caught Vince's attention, made him see that I was worth helping, and then he did the hard work of actually helping. The sandwich was just the beginning. I want to do that someday. Help someone the way you and Vince helped me. You will. When you're ready, when you're stable, when you've got something to give, you'll see someone who needs help, and you'll remember what it felt like to be that person. And you'll help. That's how this works. That's how we change the world. Years continued to pass. Jordan got married to a woman named Stephanie, who worked at Second Chance Foundation and shared his passion for helping youth. They bought a house, had 2 kids, built a life that was stable and full, and nothing like the chaos Jordan had grown up in. But Jordan never forgot where he came from. Every year, on the anniversary of the night he gave Vince his sandwich, Jordan spent the day volunteering on the streets, handing out food and resources to homeless youth, telling them that there was hope, that change was possible, that people cared. And every year, Vince rode with him, the 2 of them partners in the mission of making sure no kid had to sleep in a doorway, no teenager had to choose between eating today and eating tomorrow. No young person had to face the world completely alone. On the 20th anniversary, they stood together on 5th and Broadway, looking at the spot where Jordan's doorway had been. You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't given you that sandwich? Jordan asked. No, because I believe some things are meant to be. You were meant to help me that night. I was meant to help you. And together, we were meant to create something that helps hundreds of others. That's not random, that's purpose. You really believe that? I do. I've seen too many unlikely coincidences in my life not to believe in something bigger than us. Your doorway just happened to be on the route I was taking. My bike just happened to break down at that exact spot. You just happened to have a sandwich. I just happened to know people who could help. None of that is random. Jordan thought about that, about fate and chance and the million small decisions that had led to this moment, about how different his life would be if any one thing had been different. Well, whether it was fate or luck or coincidence, Jordan said, I'm grateful. Grateful you stopped. Grateful you helped. Grateful you became my family. Same here, son. Same here. They stood together as the sun set over Seattle, as cars passed by, oblivious to the significance of this spot as the city moved around them. Two men bound by a sandwich and a choice, by years of love and support, by a shared mission to make sure other kids got the chances they'd been given. The homeless teen had given his last sandwich to a biker, and weeks later, metaphorically, a limo had pulled up for him. Not an actual limo, but something better. Opportunity, community, family, a future. And that homeless teen had turned that gift into something bigger, a foundation that helped hundreds of other kids find their own futures, a movement that proved kindness multiplied, a legacy that would outlive them both. One sandwich, one choice, endless ripples. That was the power of seeing someone's humanity and choosing to honor it. That was the power of small acts of generosity, creating massive waves of change. That was the power of being brave enough to give when you had nothing and humble enough to accept help when it was offered. The homeless teen gave his last sandwich to a biker. Weeks later, a limo pulled up, metaphorically speaking, and everything changed. For Jordan, for Vince, for the motorcycle club, for every kid Second Chance Foundation had helped, for everyone who'd heard the story and decided to be a little more generous, a little more kind, a little more willing to see the invisible people and help them become visible again. One sandwich, one moment, one choice, everything.